What's up, everyone? Welcome to the Driven Former podcast presented by Ashbach Automotive, your leading family-owned repair shop. I'm here with Stacia Ashbach, owner of Ashbach Auto, to discuss today's topic of how to find the right auto repair shop. So to start off, why is it so important for drivers to find a shop they can trust and that does quality service?
One of the biggest investments in your life is truly your vehicle. If you think about it, you use your vehicle to go everywhere, grocery store, work, kids' school, projects, everything. You just get in your car and go. And it's a lot of things that people take for granted. And then obviously when your car breaks, you're super angry and you're like, why? And then you realize how much you truly used it for. So finding a good shop is so important that you can be able to call them, text them and be like, hey, I had my check engine light come on, or my vehicle is dead. Can I bring it in? Can I get it over to you? And being able to trust that, hey, I'm taking it to them, and they're going to take care of me.
Yeah. Yep. So we're going to break down, just starting from like you've never been to an auto repair shop before. So what should a customer feel like after the first phone call or visit with an auto repair shop like ours?
They should feel really welcomed. Welcomed, happiness, not necessarily rushed or anything like that. But they should feel, heard. You're calling in, ring, ring. Hi, my name is Jenny. I'm looking for a new shop to go to. I just moved to town, and I'm really looking just to get my oil changed and my tires rotated. Would you be able to help me out with that? Be like, yeah, Jenny, absolutely no problem. Welcome to the area. Let's just go ahead and get a little bit of information from you. Would you like to wait for this appointment? Do you want to drop it off with us? And then, she'll go through it like, oh, I'd love to wait for it. Fabulous morning or afternoon availability, working with their schedule, what works great for them. And from the get-go, you're like, wow, she's asking me these questions, or they're asking me the questions of what I want to know. And then being able to just figure out how to approach it from there. So phone call conversation is number one. I guess I didn't even touch on that before that. You should have online presence in today's world.
Yeah, absolutely.
So from the moment that they're going to Google you, being able to find you is huge. So you have an active listing, or if the shop has an active listing, they do have reviews on Google for their shop. They might have some services or products, and then they have to have a website. You don't want to go somewhere that's cash only, some guy working in his garage, no warranty. It's going to completely set you up for failure.
Yeah.
So making sure that you're doing those fact-finding things ahead of time, and then obviously leading to that phone call. The phone call is great. You're like, awesome. Now you're going to show up in person, walking into a clean facility. That's really important to me, and I feel that's really important to consumers too, that, back in the 80s and 90s, the stigma, the typical auto repair shop, you're walking in and you're greasy and and it smells dirty and all this stuff. Like, I don't want anything to do with that. It's not my style. I don't want my car to be dirty. I just don't want that. And I don't feel comfortable. So being able to walk into somewhere that's clean is really huge. The next is how you're greeted and how someone actually speaks to you while you actually, are walking into the facility. Like, hi, how can I help you? It's like, okay, awesome. This is nice. We've got smiling faces. They're able to help me out. Taking you to a waiting room. If someone has a waiting room, that's a huge benefit. And again, that's a benefit. It's not a given to all places. Some places are just small and you really just can't fit a waiting room in. We're lucky that we have a completely separate area that we can have a waiting room for people. But that can be important to you if you want to, wait for your services or work and anything like that. So those would be the biggest things in the beginning of really what to look for when, making that first interaction with the shop.
Yeah. You were talking about, the online presence, and you mentioned reviews. Like how reliable are online reviews to an automotive shop?
It is definitely a huge aspect in the Google world. We love getting reviews in. It gives us feedback. It tells us what we're doing great. And also, not even just the 5-star reviews. Maybe someone didn't have an amazing experience. I want to hear all of that. You don't know what you don't know. And I'm a huge believer in that. If something goes wrong, we want to be able to remedy the situation, grow from it, learn from it, train, all of those different things. You don't necessarily take it as a bad thing. And also the same spot, I don't think anyone can have a true 5-star review because you can't be for everyone. It
Yeah.
you just can't. There's no way to please anyone. I think everybody knows that when go to Christmas or you go to Thanksgiving, and there's always, Uncle Dale over here, that nothing is going to make that man happy.
Nope.
So the same as with a business, it's not going to be the right fit for everybody. And, being able to see that and see how the business responds to positive reviews, and they also respond to negative reviews. So you want to just see how that is, because they wouldn't be, you wouldn't be human without both of them. There's some different websites too that is like a pay to play website. So when it comes to the Y word, I don't believe in reviews on that website. The businesses have to pay a significant amount, and even so, they get to pick and choose what reviews are shown.
Yeah, you kind of filter out the bad ones there.
Yep, and there's another couple of different websites that you have to pay a membership fee to get reviews on. Like, why would you do that? That doesn't even make any sense.
Yeah.
Or if a client needs to pay to do it, it's like, this isn't how it should be. Google reviews are usually relatively well trusted though, and I would definitely look at them. If you're below a certain threshold, I'd be a little bit leery, especially if you're seeing only negative reviews. But a mixture of positive and negative is truly a good thing.
Yeah. All right. So how can a consumer tell if a shop is prioritizing their best interest?
I feel like one of the biggest items is really the tone and how someone's talking to you. I think you can really feel if someone cares or not, if it feels like just very transactional, or you feel the reason behind it. A lot of that comes back to education. Does the service advisor have a reason behind it? Like if you're asking them, like, hey, what is the purpose of this? Is this based on mileage, looks, is it broken? Those different things, and understanding why they're being recommended, along with, hey, the manufacturer recommends this at certain mileages, so that's why we're recommending it to you at this time. Or, we pulled your Carfax information and we're seeing this. Brake fluid fails copper content test. That's why we're recommending these different things. So really how the service advisor is educating them is really important to it. Something else that I think is really helpful for people to ask, especially if they just don't know, if it's, they're fact finding and finding a shop that's really good for them. Ask the advisor, what would you do if this was your vehicle? Or, if this was your daughter's vehicle or your son's vehicle, like, what would you do? A service advisor who doesn't get defensive and is honest, that he's like, hey, I would do this or I wouldn't do this for these purposes. That's a great way to build transparency and trust that, they're truly giving you their opinion and how that they would do it too. I think that's really helpful for, consumers when they're looking for someplace.
Yeah, for sure. So what makes Ashbach stand out from other local shops in the area?
Me.
Well, besides the obvious.
Besides that, honestly, we just run a bit differently here. We do, from our warranty, we've got our 3-year, 36,000-mile warranty. Our service, we truly put customer service at our stand front. Everything we do is around the client. We want to do what is best for them in their life, and our mode of doing so is by servicing their vehicles. So a lot of the times we're going to advise a client, hey, this is the path that you should take should you want to keep this vehicle long term, and keep it going. And other times maybe the client's going to tell us, hey, I'm only looking to keep this for about 6 months. What would you recommend based on that? We're going to tailor each recommendation truly based on the client, and not just because it's, you're at a vehicle, this is the mileage on it, and this is the only thing I'm going to recommend. We're going to truly tailor it to that client and what they have going on. We have loaner cars, shuttle rides, waiting room. We go above and beyond. The minimum expectation when you take your car to an auto repair shop is for it to get fixed. What happens extra, the feeling that you leave with, everything like that, that's what really makes it and what sets us apart. We care. We educate the client, and we care. That's really just the down and dirty of it.
Yeah. So are there any deal breakers that someone should walk away from if they're experiencing something at an auto shop that seems a little sketchy?
Yeah, I would say a big deal breaker for me would be being talked down to. I think that's obviously like number one. I hadn't ever experienced it until it's a funny story that I'll go into it here. Is that I was at a business training. We were with maybe about 20 other shop owners, and we were going out to a town and just seeing the different auto shops that were in that town. Mm-hmm. This was out on the East Coast, and when we had went and done this, and we kind of split off into different groups, and we're like, hey, these people are going here, we're going here, and we were all just coming up with suggestions for another, member that had a shop in the area. Like, hey, here's what your competition looks like, here's what they do, here's how just different things look, to be able to help them out. And so I had gotten paired off with another partner, with him and his wife. And so we had, she had ended up taking a phone call, and we had went into this shop. It was just a really small shop. It looked relatively dirty. We walk in there, and it was super dirty. You felt a bit uncomfortable from the moment that you walked in. What was really interesting is that when I walked in with him, I'm the one who led the conversation with the male who was behind the counter. He refused to do eye contact with me.
Really?
Refused to look at me, and anything that I questioned or I said, he directed it back to the person that I was with. So he directed it back at him, just talking like male to male instead of me as the one. I'm the one talking, buddy. Like, if you only knew. If you only knew what I knew. Yeah, if you only knew. And so when we ended up leaving there, we got out to the car, and I remember he looked at me and said, I can't believe that just happened. I'm probably never going to forget about that. Because so many people say, like, they don't want to talk. You get people that don't want to talk to women, or they talk down to women and all this. And he had never seen it happen, because he also runs a shop that it doesn't, that doesn't happen. You don't do that kind of thing. But he had saw it firsthand, and he's like, I just can't believe that was it. And, if you ever feel that you're talked down to, or, not educated properly, or someone will give you eye contact. Red flag.
Yeah.
We are not going there. We are not doing that. Another thing is cash only. I wouldn't go somewhere that's cash only. We are in the day and age that you should have everything on the books, on paper, and ability to take credit cards. That keeps a track record of, what you had done, where it was serviced. Another thing too is reporting to Carfax. I think it's really important to build your vehicle's value, that they're reporting, at least that it was been serviced at these different places, and you're able to then give it to somebody should you sell your car. Like, hey, I serviced it here, here, and here. Here's what the Carfax looks like.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. One more thing would probably be, honestly, just how they communicate with me. If I'm able to send a text message, that's really important to me, because I don't answer phone numbers that I don't know.
Yep.
So I would much rather you text me and say, hey, Stacia, call me, and then I will, I'll call you. But if you can only, call them between this hour and this hour, like, it's just not going to be convenient.
Yeah.
What clients are going to shops for, and what you should pick shop for, is really based upon a couple of different things. It's really location. Mm-hmm. Location comes back in together with convenience. And then you're going in with trust. You want to go somewhere that you're feeling trusted, or, trustworthy and everything like that. And the next would be, what it looks like. Do we have smiling faces? Do we have a clean place? Those are really the big things that I feel that clients look for when trying to find a new shop. You don't want to go drive 30 miles in the opposite direction. You want to usually find a shop within 5 to 10 miles of your house, and be able to work with your schedule.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, kind of adding on to what we were saying there, do you think like modern technology or shops that have new and up-to-date technology, you think that adds sort of that customer, I don't know,
value? For
yeah.
sure. Huge value. We do digital inspections. I have said that before. I'm a big promoter in the digital inspections, because it's just transparency. The client's able to see what the color of the fluid looks like, what their ball joints are loose. You're able to shake them and show them what that looks like.
Yeah, because you show pictures on the reports as well, and videos if you need to. Yeah.
Pictures, videos, and then we can have explanations in there of why it's recommended. If you don't change these, this is either a red, yellow, or green. So if you don't change this might be something that you may need to look for in the next 6 months, or, hey, this is a really big safety concern. We would really recommend you changing this right now, or, servicing these parts. It's just something that's complete benefit for the client. There are different shops that run the paper version. A lot of time they're just truly pencil whipped down. You don't have pictures, you don't have videos. You know, what's the track record of just writing good, or checking good? Like, was it really? Like, the digital inspection is truly showing you what was looked at on your vehicle, and then you're able to keep it, because a lot of places they don't expire, so you're able to have that for a long time. And if they keep the same system, you're able to go back and check the history of, you know, what did it look like, you know, 7 months ago. And that's huge for the client in building value and trust.
Yeah, so looking at those service reports, is it okay to get a second opinion on those from other shops? Is that pretty common, or is that?
It definitely is, especially if you necessarily have the value with it. If, you know, you're not positive on the shop, if, you know, you're new to the area, or maybe if you're a dealer, if you're, you know, you've been a completely just servicing your vehicle at the dealership, you're like, you know what, I'm ready to check a second opinion at an independent shop. That's totally fine. And if the shop that you're going to acts, you know, really strange about it or defensive about it, it could be a bit of a red flag.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with a second opinion. With, you know, going into second opinions is always realizing what kind of, you know, what level of warranty that they have, what kind of value that they bring, the services, the communication, you know, loaner vehicle that they can provide. All of those different things really lead into it. No one wants to go to the cheapest place, or at least no one that comes here wants to go to the cheapest place. You're coming here because you value the experience and the trust and, you know, the feeling that we give you, and the expertise. But if you're not necessarily wanting the highest end place either. So, I mean, going to the dealership, going to an independent, it's really going to be what is important to you and how you feel.
Yeah, so price shouldn't be the biggest factor when you're looking at a shop. You don't want to go to the cheapest. Is that what you're saying?
No, I mean, you think of it at everyone. You go ahead and you look at, say you're looking at the grocery store and you're like, all right, I've got 4 different choices here. I'm getting, you're getting pasta sauce. Let's just go with that.
Yep.
Usually you're like, all right, $10 a jar. I think that's a little obsessive. But then you're like, okay, well, how does this jar only $1.50? Like, what's the difference in here? Usually you settle on something in the middle.
Yeah.
And that's just something that is human nature that people do. But knowing what is the difference of each of those is huge. So, looking at the $1.50 jar of pasta, all right, turn the ingredients around. You're going to read a list of 35 ingredients. Now you're looking at that $10 bottle of pasta and you're like, all right, sweet, tomatoes, olive oil, and salt. Oh, and basil. We've got 4 ingredients here.
Yeah.
You can understand why it's priced a little bit higher, less ingredients, but more care and thought went into it.
Yeah.
And it's just, you're paying for what you get, or you get what you pay for. And that's huge also in the automotive industry. You can get your brakes done no matter what. Everybody needs brakes. Your brakes go out. It's a wearable
Very common
item.
thing. Yeah.
100%. And brake prices can definitely vary from where you're going. But knowing on what is involved in a full brake job, your inspection, is it going to be just pads and rotors, and calipers? Do you need any brake lines replaced? Are you getting a brake fluid flush? So when you're calling around and price shopping, you truly don't have that value brought into it because you don't exactly know what you need. All you know is that your brakes are starting to grind. Okay, so does that mean that something's getting caught? Do you have no pad material left? Has it ruined the rotors? Is a caliper hanging up? Do you have, how's your brake fluid look? All those different things you don't know when you're calling, nor does the shop know if they're giving you giving you a quote over the phone.
Yeah.
Just a quote and an estimate, they truly are different things because places aren't going to do the work without providing it to you first. But if you call them, they're like, all right, yep, it'll be $700 to do the brakes. Yeah. How do they know that?
How do they know?
They didn't pick that. Are they grabbing out of, we're going to the extra value brakes and we're going to pick these ones. Hey, they only last about 2 years. It's going to cost you $500 though, instead of spending $700. So you're going to have those brakes replaced in 2 years. Whereas if you would have just spent another $200, those brakes could have possibly lasted you 5 years.
Yeah.
And just knowing, you get what you pay for.
Yeah. It's a great analogy with the grocery store example too. Sort of going off that, and we'll kind of wrap this up with this question, is how can someone do their homework before committing to an auto shop?
Checking out their website, their social media. They might have someone cool like me. You never know.
Yep.
like us
Yep.
doing this, being able to see, is it real people? Is it just stock images? Do they work on your type of vehicle? Is it just, is it just a European shop, or is it an all makes and models? Figuring out if they, work on your vehicle, checking out their reviews. Like I had said before, seeing how, how they look. Another thing, you could check on Facebook, see if anyone recommends it, or Nextdoor is also a big app that neighbors look at.
Yeah.
And then always just talk to your friends. Word of mouth is one of the biggest trust factors that someone can give that. So if Sally recommended you to go here, it's always going to be in your head like, hey, Sally sent me on over here, and you can say that when you walk in, like, oh hey, she sent me on over here, and they'll be like, oh yeah, no, perfect, Sally with the BMW, like, yeah. No, we totally know her, and you're able to already build that trust factor because someone that you trust recommended them, and that even just builds a factor right there that the shop didn't even necessarily have to do anything for that client to be able to have that relationship already brought in there. But yeah, just asking around, doing those different things, ask your coworkers, and then of course, search it on Google.
Yeah.
Who's in my area? Who's local to me? You've got mechanic near me, auto shop near me, auto repair. All those different things is going to, are going to lead into you being able to find hopefully the next best shop.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, that wraps it up. Great job shouting out our socials. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok. Make a lot of interesting and fun content over there, as well as some educational stuff like this as well. So yeah, that pretty much wraps it up. Anything else to say?
I don't think so. Like, follow, and subscribe.
Perfect. We'll catch you later.